Thanks for joining me on episode 1220 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Rachel Murphy. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to leave a legacy of emotional, spiritual, and financial wealth with your family is key. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Mater.
Feel desperate to make money, but you're doing them because you truly love to do them. And other people begin to feel that energy. They begin to sense that energy, and they want to be around that. They want to be part of that. They want to join in that journey. They want to help you succeed because of that energy that you have around success.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in yourself through stewarding your treasures, I talk with you about how we often think that money leads to feeling more worthwhile. I share how even if you go from having no money to having plenty, your emotions often don't change. And I also talk about how worth is more likely to lead to money than money to worth. As we talk about stewarding your treasures, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without costing yourself an extra dime? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show. If you enjoy the show when you're ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. We've talked before about how a lot of the studies show that over a certain amount, money no longer makes you happy. And the truth is, I would argue that's also true when it comes to worthiness, when it comes to feeling worthy. Once you've got a certain amount of money, it doesn't necessarily directly affect your worthiness anymore and that feeling that you have of being worthy. In fact, I would argue that sometimes the way we spend our money actually can make us feel less worthy. For instance, a lot of times we earn a lot of money and we are paid well, but we're paid well doing a job that just makes us absolutely miserable. Is that worth it? Is that something that adds to our worthiness in life? We may just value ourselves based on our income when the reality is there's much more than that. We oftentimes spend money on things that, quote, keep us up with the Joneses, that give us appearances of the facade of having worth as opposed to actually having worth. I actually know a couple that was a past client of mine that lived in one of the nicest houses in the neighborhood, and they drove the nicest cars in the neighborhood, but they never invited anyone in the house because they didn't have any furniture because they couldn't afford it. And often we use debt and take on other people's money in a way to try to add to our own worth. And then we end up leveraging our future for our present. The truth is, the way we spend our money often doesn't directly lead to our feelings of worthiness. And what's more, if you are in a situation where you're making less money than you'd like, whatever that is, especially if you've been actually dealing with, for instance, coming out of bad debt or dealing with living below the poverty line or struggling to feel worthy around the money because the truth is you make less than you would like to make and you've got guilt and shame and fear all around that and you don't feel like you deserve to be making more. And let's say you do manage to get out of that situation. You finally get the good job, you get a better education, you get a better position, whatever it is, you open your own business, you launch your own dream, and now you've got more money coming in. And oftentimes people look at me and they're like, finally, we've done it. We paid off the debt. We've gotten where we want to be. We've got money coming in. Why doesn't it feel perfect yet? Why do I still feel like I'm struggling with these feelings of worthiness? And the truth is, there's some practical reasons. Like, for instance, oftentimes you've got pent-up needs, whether that's healthcare needs, whether that's emotional needs, that now you're trying to catch up for because you've been saying no to yourself for years and holding your breath. And now you finally get a chance to breathe, and that's expensive. You also are now dealing with kind of the opposite fear. You had a fear when you didn't have enough that as soon as anything goes wrong, the house of cards is going to fall apart. Every emergency that you have is both an emergency of that kind plus a financial emergency on top of it. Now you've got some money and the financial emergency has gone away, but you still have problems. And what's more, now you're so terrified of not having money because you know what it feels like to be in that situation that you almost grab a hold of it too hard and you begin to hoard it as opposed to actually using it in the ways that lets you move past that. You begin to struggle with imposter syndrome. You begin to struggle with the feeling that you don't belong, that as soon as people figure that out, you're going to go right back to where you were before and be struggling all over again. And yet, that's just a memory. That's just something from the past. And you often struggle with that, sometimes for years. But the truth is, the funny thing is that we often look to money to give us feelings of worth. But when you do the hard work and begin to develop your own feelings of worth, and you begin to recognize that you are worthwhile, that you do have something that you can give to the world, that you are valuable, that's when actually money often shows up in your life. That's when the energy that you have begins to change. That's when the fact that you put this feeling out and you begin to do the things, not because you're hoping to get paid, not because you feel desperate to make money, but you're doing them because you truly love to do them. And other people begin to feel that energy. They begin to sense that energy and they want to be around that. They want to be part of that. They want to join in that journey. They want to help you succeed because of that energy that you have around success. And when that happens, the money often shows up. So it's not that spending money and using money gives you worth, but it is that if you can do the hard work to develop and believe in your own worth, then the money truly actually starts to show up. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of treasures, you can sign up for our treasures tips by going to inspiredstewardship.com/treasures or text in the U.S. 44222 treasures tips. And we'll send you 5 weeks of our best tips on stewarding your treasures. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.